That crappy intro is just so I can shut my sound off, so I'm not because I monitor the video at the same time.
Okay.
So here we are with Jackson Wheat, and your channel is linked in my description. And we're going to talk a little bit about horseshoe crabs and arthropods, and something called Stabilomorphs, or living fossils, which is a term that I understand you hate.
That is my one thing that I'm like, curse you, Darwin. Why would you do this to us?
Why would you do this? Yeah, he did coin the term, didn't he? Or he
did with reference to, I believe it was. He calls them ganoid fishes, which is kind of a generic term for like gars, paddlefish, bowfins, things like that. These fish that have ganoid scales, which are these super heavy scales that ancient fish pretty much all had, and fish kind of downsized their defenses. So basically they kind of jettisoned ganoid scales and developed cycloid scales, which are a lot lighter, and that gives them more maneuverability. However, if you lessen your defenses, that makes you more open to predators. So that's where lampreys actually started getting into parasitism, was once fish developed these lightweight cycloid scales. But anyway, yes, so Darwin came up with the term.
Cool. Yep. So do you want to see what kicked all this off, the video?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one is, let me figure out what I can do here. A little window. And there was a comment thread, and this is Ryan from Save Me Apologetics.
Okay.
And we'll play a little bit of him. The first part will really aggravate you, as it aggravates me every time I listen. But go ahead and check this out.
1, 2, 3, 4. You're in a religion and you don't even know it. You believe things because people tell you to. Ooh. Welcome back to the You're in a Religion and You Don't Even Know It podcast. I'm your host, Ryan. And today I am issuing a put up or shut up challenge. All of you super smart, evolution believing atheists tell me over and over again.
Talking about me.
Evolution totally happens at the macro level, but it takes millions and millions of years. So there's no way that we humans could ever see it because we don't live that long.
Okay.
I found one. I found an animal that has lived even before the dinosaurs. We have tons of fossils, and it's still alive today. That animal is the horseshoe crab.
Whoa.
There we go.
So I would love to talk to this guy. I'd love to have him on. If you can get in touch with him and tell him like that, super smart atheist evolutionist would love to talk to him. And actually Dapper, and because it's not just me, Dapper and I do the shows together on Thursday. But yeah, we'd love to talk to him if he ever wants to come on.
Yeah. I'm going to be talking to him, I hope, at noon tomorrow, again, on morality and atheists. And, I will mention it to him, and I've got his email, and I can hook you guys up, and we'll see if he's open to that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him about this. As Andrew has already given the game away, Limulus has not been around that long. So Limulus, actually, back up for a moment. There are 4 species of horseshoe crabs. There are 3, which are in 3 genera. There's Limulus, Polyphemus, Tachyplus, and what is it? Carcinoscorpius or something like that.
Something.
What is it called? What is it called? What's the other horseshoe crab? I'm drawing a blank. Horseshoe crabs. I feel silly for not remembering it because I looked at them just the other day. Yeah, Carcinoscorpius. There we go. Yeah. So so those are the 3 genera. The one that is closest to me because I live in the U.S. is Limulus polyphemus, the Atlantic horseshoe crab. So this guy lives kind of basically along like the around like the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean, and then up to like Massachusetts, all the way along the coast.
Yeah.
So these three genera split from each other. Tachypilus and Carcinoscorpius are like sisters, and then Limulus is out on a branch by itself. They split. They form the family Limulidae, which is in the order Xiphosaura, which means sword tails, because they have this long line of tail. And so that family split in the late Cretaceous, so like 74 million years ago, something like that. However, what that means is Limulus polyphemus can, like, if we assume that this has been the one species in its line, which it hasn't been, but there are others. But if you just assume that, then what that means is, actually, it must have been before that, because Limulus darwini is in the Jurassic. Yeah, so it has to be earlier than that. Okay, it must have been late Jurassic then. Yeah, 148 million years ago. So Limulidae has only been around since the Mesozoic, and if you assume that Limulus polyphemus is like the only species within its genus, then that would mean like at most it's been around for this time for like 148 million years. But it's not true, because there have been other species of Limulus. For example, Limulus darwini, which is not the same, which is now extinct. And then there's also Mesolimulus, which is a now totally extinct species of horseshoe crab. That was the one that was made famous in the Solnophan formation. It has this really long trail. It basically fell into an anoxic zone. And yeah, the modernish, it evolved during the Mesozoic and during the Mesozoic, yeah. So it has this really long trail because it fell into this anoxic zone. It tried to escape, didn't work, it died, and then Mesolimulus left this really beautiful fossil behind. Before that, you have other, more diverse horseshoe crabs. You have like Lunataspis and these other like Euprorops and things like that, and Bellinurus, I think was another one.
There's about 4 extinct orders, basically, that went extinct a long time ago.
Exactly.
And like I tried to explain it to them like this, with that basically you've got this timeline here, and let's see if I can blow that up. And what we're doing is we're slicing it right here, right? But then if we sliced it back here, we'd find a lot of variation, more variation.
Yes.
Slice it back here, we wouldn't. But it's just like if you lived 250 million years ago and you looked at the one existing trilobite and you say, oh, it hasn't changed. But then if you go back another 100 million years, you'll find a ton of them, like a whole bunch of. So anyway, I tried to explain that, but
that's a good analogy. Yeah, absolutely. The problem is, I think the root of this problem has nothing to do with like the actual diversity. The root of the problem is quite simply, these are not the same things, but when we say they're stasis, what they're doing is they're just kind of eyeballing it. The creationist is just kind of eyeballing it, saying it looks the same. We came up with the term. It's not just me. It was Nestlig, and we came up with the term on my channel for this. We call it the Haran Yaya tactic. Probably heard of Haran Yaya. No, you never heard? Okay, so Haran Yaya that's the I don't know what you call it, the stage name or whatever for this guy named Adnan Oktar, who is a Turkish creationist. Okay. He actually do it.
What's that?
His name is Adnan Oktar. I can put here in our private chat. So Haran Yaya Adnan Oktar. So he's a Turkish creationist. He's actually in jail for like 1,000 years now. Because of like sex trafficking. So
for 1,000 years, when is he going to get out? Soon? Or is he? No,
he just got put in prison.
He just started. Oh my God!
Yeah, so he's got a little ways to go. So Haran Yaya is a Turkish creationist. He has actually worked with the Institute for Creation Research. They sent him materials, their creationist materials. And he basically spread those around in the Middle East. So he was sort of a wing of like the Institute for Creation Research in the Middle East. What he became famous for, at least in my understanding, is he wrote he probably didn't write it. He commissioned the writing of a book, which was this very beautiful, nice, glossy book. And what it would have on each page is it would have a fossil organism and a living organism. And he would say, look, the horseshoe crab, here's a horseshoe crab, 150 million years ago. And then, the modern horseshoe crab, and he'd say, look, no evolution has occurred after 148 million years, whatever it is. Right. So he wrote an entire book, and he just like this, over that same sort of thing over and over and over. And he mailed this book out to like every biologist, like Richard Dawkins got a copy, P.Z. Myers got a copy, Jerry Coyne, like everybody who's anybody got a copy of this book. And so it turned out, as they're reviewing this book, something very funny happened, or something funny happened that they realized, which is that on a couple of the pages, so we'd have an insect fossil with a modern insect, except that modern insect was a fishing lure, and the fishing hook was still in it.
No.
Yes. You can find pictures of it on Google Images. It's the funniest thing. They left the hooks in some of the fishing lures.
So he didn't do a really good job of editing his book?
No, I think he probably never even looked at it. He probably had other people working for him who put this together.
Oh my goodness.
And so we term this the har and yaya tactic. And I was having an argument with this guy on Twitter who did, several people on Twitter who kept posting images like that just over and over and over. And sometimes it'd be things that look relatively similar. As Andrew points out, they eyeball it for superficial similarities.
Yeah.
But a few of them were things that were nowhere near related. Like it's like how could you possibly think these were similar? So, for instance, my favorite one was, do you know what Pikaia gracilens is?
No.
Pikaia was a fossil that was made from the Burgess Shale up in Canada, which was made famous by Stephen Jay Gould's book Wonderful Life back in 1989. Okay. Pikaia is a little wormy guy. He's like an early chordate, so like a lancelet relative, basically, probably. So he's a little teeny tiny wormy chordate guy from this Middle Cambrian deposit, so about 518 million years ago. And someone put that Pikaia as the fossil, and then for the modern organism, they put an eel.
Okay.
Pikaia doesn't have a jaw. It doesn't have a backbone. It doesn't have vertebrate eyes. It's the craziest thing. There's like no similarity between these organisms other than they both look kind of sinuous. Yeah. That's it.
You always got to wonder if they fooled themselves before they try to fool you, or, if they're just being very dishonest. And, I'd say in Ryan's case, he is actually, he believes this, right? Mm-hmm. He's been fooled by his own, or by whatever he's heard. He believes it, and he believes it so thoroughly that he'll very, very arrogantly and be a little cocky and go up against you or anybody else that knows a little better.
Oh, they always are. They're always cocky when they start these conversations, but by the end, they're like they feel. Like we take the wind out of their sails because they come in, they're like, I bet you've never heard this one before, and then it's like genetic entropy or something like that, and so it's like, okay, whatever,
Yeah, I think at the end he said, you damned elite. He called me an elite something or another, and he was kind of pissed off at me. And, he was frustrated. And I could kind of understand, because it is so hard to explain some of this stuff to somebody, but there's a whole bunch of misconceptions here. And the first one is that evolution seems to be something that's going for some kind of perfect fitness, like Sal Cordova. He thinks that that fitness should be defined as really good engineering, right? The best engineering ever, right? No.
Yeah.
The other thing is people don't think in terms of populations.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking into the horseshoe crab, I think in Delaware, that one time there were 31 million of them. They actually went down to about 300,000 because we've been stealing their blood and killing them.
Yeah, and use their eggs as bait, as fish bait.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we are the first challenge there has been to this particular there are body forms, okay, and oddly enough, the crab form seems to be something that evolution keeps finding.
Mm-hmm.
You have a term for it, crabiferous
Carcinization. Yep.
Carcinization, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that here in our side check.
But there's and then just because the form of the animal doesn't look like it's changed, it doesn't mean that there hasn't been a whole lot of change in the genome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one paper I listed in my description says that the horseshoe crab had 3 instances of whole genome duplication.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that will keep a species stable, because now, in order for there to be a morphological change, if the morphology, the way the embryo develops, right, if it's a dominant form of development, then you have 2 other genomes and you have all these mutations. You would have to have the same mutation across all those chromosomes, right, in order to change it into a different form. So like onions, I think, are going to be pretty stable because they've got 16 billion base pairs. And it takes a lot in order to hit the right one that's going to make some morphological change. So there's that. And there's just a number of other reasons. Horseshoe crabs, they occupy that sub-littoral zone. And that's fairly stable, even under a lot of extinction events, sort of out in the ocean a little bit. And there's all of these factors. But anyway, those are just the things that I found in just starting to research this a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So, but anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you got more. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the whole, like, I find that creationists, when we had this conversation about stasis, equivocate pretty spectacularly, because they say stasis, and you have to litigate, like, okay, well, what do you mean when you say stasis?
Right.
Do you mean it's like identical, like in its entirety? And I did this with a guy on Twitter who actually Dapper and I then talked to. He goes by Terry. He posted like a meme, one of the Haranyaya memes, which actually I also did a video, or we did a video on the Haranyaya tactic like 4 years ago. Wow, time flies. But he posted this meme, and I was like, I bet you, I told him this, I said, I bet you your Twitter account, not a single one of those, the fossils, is the same as the modern organism. And he was like, whoa, are you trying to say, he's like, whoa, I'm not saying they're, atom for atom identical. It's like, what does that even mean? But like, when they say identical, my thinking is it's going to have the exact same number, or the exact same, like, complete set of characters then as it does today. And whenever you apply, and I think that's a fair metric. If you're going to say it's identical, it's going to be the same.
Right.
Or stasis. But then if you look up any of these organisms, like Limulus darwini, for instance, you can look at the description of it on the paper on the horseshoe crab of the genus Limulus, living fossil or Stabilomorph. And you can see there's a whole section, comparison of Limulus darwini with extinct and extant limulines. And it talks about it with regard to Limulus polyphemus, the modern horseshoe crab. And so you can say, like, well, look, obviously it's not the same. Here are these characteristics that it doesn't share with modern ones. And there's also a book I'm reading right now. It's by Richard Forty. It is titled Survivors, and it's all about, I'll put that here on our side chat. Survivors
by Richard
Forty. There we go. And so he's a paleontologist. He's done like Cambrian stuff. And so this whole book is about living fossils, and the first chapter is about the horseshoe crab, and he talks about, like, living fossil, which is a term, as we talked about earlier. Living fossil is a term coined by Darwin, but Darwin didn't. I feel like this is kind of a recurring problem with creationists. Darwin didn't mean it literally. Darwin didn't mean this is the exact same organism today. It's So Darwin used it with regard to ganoid fishes. He also talks about the platypus and the lungfish as like living fossils, because we evolve, or tetrapods evolved from a stock of lobe-finned fish that probably looked sort of similar to lungfish, and so there are these similarities there, but they're obviously not the same.
The other thing I've been looking into is fitness landscapes, basically, and the differences in fitness landscapes. And there's a book. It's kind of a compilation of papers by Stuart Kaufman and somebody else, and going through some of the early papers on fitness landscape. Well, 1990 papers, that decade, and what they've been doing with the mathematics of fitness landscapes. And one of the interesting things is that there are landscapes that are like plateaus where you're not going to have any morphological change, or if you have very small morphological change, you're not going to have a change in fitness, right? And if that happens over a large population, it is just almost impossible for a morphological change to fix in the population, the entire population. Unless there's a problem, unless the thing goes down and there's some sort of speciation pressure and it goes down to a bottleneck, well, then a small change with a slightly greater fitness will change. And it varies across every single animal. I mean, this whole thing is unfolding and on different fitness landscapes. And to make matters worse, you've got populations, and then you have, if you imagine a lava lamp, right, with these globs coming up, right? Or populations. Well, there's another dimension of lava lamp that has the environment, because the environment is blubbing around, and there's these globs, and the whole thing is so complex that it's going to take us a very long time to even come up with the right mathematics to deal with some of this stuff. But we're borrowing things from spin glass models in physics and a bunch of other things, and it turns out to be the same mathematics, but it's all about complexity.
I think you're talking about drift and that kind of stuff, right? Where one isn't going to predominate over the others. And in the case of horseshoe crabs, of course, one of the typical points I go to for not just horseshoe crabs, but any organism that is considered a living fossil or stabilomorph, whatever, is these things are almost always generalists. They're generalists in, they have the ability to occupy a pretty wide environment, and they are really well adapted for the environment in which they live. So horseshoe crabs, as you said, are sublittoral. They live in the sand, they eat worms, and then they come onto the beach to breed, and that's about it. That's the whole life. And when you think about it, the sand wave interface really doesn't change. That's a pretty steady environment. That's not really going anywhere. The organisms on land may change, or it might get warmer or cooler, sure, but the actual environment itself really doesn't change all that much. Unless something comes along that's able to dig through the sand and pick out adult horseshoe crabs and just destroying the population, which so far we haven't seen yet. But aside from us, of course, but that doesn't really change all that much. Coelacanths are another example. They're pretty deep sea, so there really aren't a whole lot of predators. They have pretty slow metabolism, so they live for a long time. They have they eat whatever they catch. Also Lingula, the brachiopods, little lamp shells, as they call them. Again, just living in the sand, just kind of filter feeding. Again, that's not really changing all that much. You sit in the sand and you filter feed. Once you get good enough at that, why do you need to change? And again, go ahead.
Another thing about horseshoe crabs is that they can handle a wide range of salinity and a wide range of temperatures. So they can move a little bit, up and down to a certain degree. And they just happen to be an animal that adapted for a wide range. So there is no pressure for them to change. And then they lay like 5,000 eggs.
Yeah, crap load of eggs. Yeah,
20 times a year in a season or something. So they lay a tremendous amount of eggs. And it's like, go ahead, eat 90% of them. We don't care. 99%.
Nestling also makes a good point. It might also be developmental constraints, which is true. That's another thing.
Right. That's what I meant by fitness landscapes. Okay. There is like there would be a sharp valley or a sharp drop off between two morphological systems, right? And it couldn't make that. It couldn't get across that, basically. So depending on, and that's perhaps why this crabification, that's not the right word, happened.
Close enough.
Yeah. Because when you get that form, there's nowhere for it to go where it can cross that fitness valley, right, and get to another peak. So that will stop it too. But
absolutely. That was an interesting paper I read about developmental constraints, and it went over. I think it was it marsupials? I think it points out how like the marsupials are constrained to go down a particular route. Because of that, they can only evolve within a certain area because of their development that they go through. So because of that, they won't ever be able to like get out of this. They basically kind of bottleneck themselves in these one series of evolutionary paths. And that's certainly possible. Developmental constraints is really interesting like concept. Like who is unable to escape their evolutionary, paths. Like you get kind of backed into a corner, and then it's like, well, where are you supposed to go from here? You can't really go anywhere. You can, you just either you're really good at your niche, or you just get wiped out, and like that's kind of it. There's nowhere else to go. But
extinct is always an option.
Going extinct is an option. I do also think it is. To return to what you were saying earlier about the diversity thing, I don't know. That's what it is. Yes, the marsupials have to develop their front arms and jaws very quickly to be able to climb and suckle. That's what it is. Yeah, thank you, Nestle. I appreciate it. So with horseshoe crabs, if you go back in time to like the Paleozoic, you would see that there is a whole lot of diversity. There's a lot less diversity now because many of them have gone extinct, and we're just left with the 4 species we have today. We did a video on my channel. It was the coelacanth's tail, where we talk about the concept of the living fossil, because the coelacanth is another one that's typically called a living fossil. But again, if you compare the coelacanth to its closest relatives, like Mawsonia, it is pretty different. There's a lot of morphological characters that are different between the two of them. Also, not Mawsonia. Is it Swinzia? Swinzia is the name of it. I misspoke. Swinzia. There we go. That's the closest fossil species related to the living coelacanth. Oh no, my camera's doing it again.
My camera does that every now and then. Do you have a Mac?
No, I don't. Well, now it's not working at all. Anyway, let me see if I can refresh it. I'll try refreshing it.
Put that in the chat. Oh, okay. You're back.
Swinzia, yeah. Okay, there we go. All right, sometimes it does that. Coelacanth is another example. Of course, it's different from its closest fossil relatives. And you mentioned the paper on Limulus darwini introduces a term called the Stabilomorph, which Stabilomorph is an attempt to make a living fossil a bit more rigorous. Because living fossil just kind of means if it looks pretty similar to things in the past, then it's a living fossil. But like, that doesn't really mean anything. Well, Stabilomorph attempts to make it a bit more rigorous by saying well, if a genus survives longer than one extinction event, then it's a stabilomorph. So Limulus, having survived the KPG extinction event 66 million years ago, is therefore a stabilomorph, along with actually all the other all living coelacanth genera are technically stabilomorphs, I believe, actually by that definition. But then there are other ones like actually, I don't know if Latimeria, the coelacanth, is. I don't think it is. I don't think Latimeria is a stabilomorph. I could be wrong. I don't think so. Then there are several others like the ginkgo, so the modern ginkgo biloba. Ginkgo extends past the KPG.
Yeah.
Lingula, so the brachiopod, also does. Which again, there's still a degree of arbitrariness to this because taxonomic ranks are inherently arbitrary. So there's still a degree of arbitrariness, but it's at least a bit better than just saying if it looks kind of similar. So there is still that sort of like line in the sand that the term draws, and I do appreciate it for that. So
there's this kind of misconception that whatever's happening right now, like in our current time slice, they fail to be able to think in terms of taking other time slices, in the past and in the future. In the future, there probably aren't going to be any horseshoe crabs. And they're all going to be extinct, but there's this idea that evolution is reaching some pinnacle. It has to move. It has evolution has to happen, and it's like evolution happens if you're damn lucky.
Yeah,
you got to be damn lucky. You got to find the right pathway. Okay, and that pathway has to increase fitness, and you have to have a smaller population. It can't be a monster population, or you have to have something like a river. Basically, a volcano creates a new river and separates two different groups, and they will speciate eventually. They'll slowly start to morph. How fast they morph depends again, on population and how successful they are. So it's just all these different factors that they don't take into account. But yeah.
And there's kind of I think something that I think they kind of take for granted evolution when they make this argument, because, well, one, they say I guess they're trying to find contradictions like within the evolutionary paradigm. So they're trying to say like, okay, well, you think things have to change, but here's the thing that hasn't changed, even though it has, but just assuming it hasn't. So they take for granted within that argument, though, the fact that by that same logic, like lots of other things have changed. Like there were no, birds are a group that originated from, dinosaurs, which is a group that originated from the broader, sauropsids, the reptiles, which originated from, more amphibious critters, from, lobe-finned fish, and so on. So like if we take this, we can see like, oh, well, look at all this change, this evolutionary change that has occurred. What about that? Well, they don't believe that happened either. So it's like, it's, there's, it's like either way you're screwed. If there's no change, then like, it's a problem for evolution. If you say, well, here's a lot of change, then they're like, I don't believe that happened. So it's like you can't win.
Ryan makes a big deal of macro and micro evolution.
Yeah.
And also another thing he likes to make a big deal of is observational science. He is a Kent Hovind fan. He's a real fan of Kent Hovind. And so he comes up with this observational science and stuff. And, you can't observe. I wonder if anybody's ever observed cigarettes causing cancer. Have you ever actually observed that? You think about it.
Probably not. I mean, how would you tell? You'd have to look at like every individual cell, right? So,
Right. You'd have to catch it right at the right time in order to observe that. But
like, the like, polycyclic aromatic, so whenever coming off the cigarette, it went into this particular cell and caused inhibited the restraints on growth, and that's how no one's ever going to actually witness that, So,
right.
The micro macro canard is so tiresome. I think literally every conversation I have with creationists brings that up at some point, and it's like, actually, one thing Dapper and I did was for funsies, we brought this creationist on. His name was Robert Grun, and so we're chatting with him, and I'm like, okay, all right. So you mentioned you wrote these tweets about macroevolution. He's like, yeah. So I was like, okay. So we actually in 10 minutes, I walked him through a series of questions about microevolution, and he agrees with every single one. I'm like, okay, so you agree that a species is this? Yes. Right. Okay, you agree. So therefore, you agree that speciation is this? Yes. Okay, so the definition of macroevolution that was given back in the 1920s by Yuri Filipchenko is this. And he goes, okay. I'm like, so you agree with this definition? Yes. And you agree with speciation? Yes. And what the species is? Yes. Okay, well, here's an example that meets all of these criteria. Right. And I laid it out for him, and he goes, okay, I changed my mind on macroevolution. Really? He's like, he wanted to change the definition. He's like, wait, I don't agree with that definition of macroevolution. I changed my mind. And so
he didn't actually change his mind. Okay.
No, he backtracked. Actually, I've only ever been in one conversation with a creationist where by the end of that conversation, he actually like changed his mind and was like, I'm not a creationist anymore.
Wow. That is special.
He goes by Giant Midget on Twitter, and not on Twitter, on is this your wallet? Yes, the is this your wallet meme. But he's on my YouTube, so like every so often, like I'll see him on there. Like really, that's what keeps my channel going. I think is like people like him. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're okay now, but you were roboting for like 30 seconds. At least.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was laughing at the is this your wallet meme. But Giant Midget is a guy who Dapper and I talked to him, and he was like, yeah, I'm not a creationist anymore by the end of the conversation. So
cool.
But Robert Gruen, he agreed to basically everything, and then was like, no, wait, hold on, I don't like that. That I agreed to macroevolution. Because if you look at like Yuri Filipchenko, the Russian entomologist who coined micro and macroevolution, he coined these terms because there was a debate that was going on in evolutionary theory in the 1920s.
Yeah.
And it lasted into the 1930s and I think even into the 40s, really. But it's not really so much of a thing anymore. And there was this idea of what's called macromutationism.
Yeah.
So you had like the macromutationists on the one hand, and then the Darwinists on the other. The Darwinists were like, all evolution is very gradual. And the macromutationists would say, well, yes, you can have tiny incremental gradual evolution, but that's only within species. To go from one species to another, you have to have big genetic leaps, the macromutations. And so you had these two groups who were fighting with each other for part of the development of the neo-Darwinian synthesis. And so Filipchenko was actually in the macromutation camp along with Richard Goldschmidt years later. And so that's why he separated these terms, because he accepted like, okay, yes, you can have incremental change, but only within the species. You don't have incremental change going from one species to another. You have to have, or saltationism. Yeah, so you have to have these big genetic leaps to go from one to another. And we know that that's not necessarily the case. It can happen, not always. Goodness. So that's why he separated those. But creationists don't know anything about the history of science or history of biology, so of course they don't know that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I've looked into a number of things that basically the fin to limb thing is something that I've really spent a lot of time on, and I still have only scratched the surface. I still know nothing, but it's unbelievable watching this whole thing about embryology. When you get a good grasp of embryology and you look at these same systems, right, and it's just a little bit of a timing change, and you'll end up with a longer bone, or you'll end up with some other little change. And you have all these little changes that amount to a big change at some point. And you've got to look very carefully into it. One really good one is the evolution of the liver. And it's, started out as a little kind of a diversion of blood vessels into a little bit of tissue alongside the intestinal tract of coming out of the stomach. and then develop from there, basically. And then you start looking at how the tissues in the liver diversified and how the different biochemical mechanisms could be added one at a time. And you end up with this massive liver thing that we got now. And you can start to see it when you look at embryology, when you look at how a zygote turns into an organism, and you see all of these fields, right? And then there's all this new research where they're kind of, the evolutionists are fighting with each other about basically, okay, life. I'm reading it backwards.
Oh, sorry, Life Unfolding, phenomenal book on embryology. Highly, highly recommend.
If you're right, I've got it somewhere in the library, so yeah. I'll take a look at that. But I mean, it's incredible. PZ Myers teaches a couple classes on embryology. Did you know that? And he uses Wolpert. Wolpert is the textbook, I believe.
I'm aware of that. I've never looked into any of the stuff. I know he used to do zebrafish stuff back in, I think it was the 90s. Yeah. But now he does spider stuff, so which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's into spider stuff now. Really into spider stuff. But anyway.
Andrew says he has a random question for me. Oh, sure. Shoot.
Should I send him a link?
Oh, sure. If you want, or Nestle, if they want to come in, I'm happy.
I can put a link out here. I'm not sure how long I want to do this.
Okay, that's fair.
Definitely another hour. We do another hour, but no longer. Yeah. I don't know about you.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
But
really wait for the old man.
I understand. I really hate the micro macro divide. I think it's it only existed in a time of evolutionary biology where there was a debate over what the process of speciation was. Now that we've moved way past that, I hate the terms and I wish that they would just go away.
Yeah.
So
what is the current state of the thinking on Stephen Jay Gould and punctuated
Alex Eldridge? Oh yeah, those guys. So
hate? Is there
do what?
Is there a lot of hatred yet for his?
So it's kind of it kind of depends on who you ask. I think the stoned ape hypothesis is nonsense. I don't give any time to it at all. So it kind of depends, right? If I know a guy who does hate it, he's a population geneticist, Zach Hancock, and he does hate it. I think it has its place in paleontology, but the actual the population genetics approach of punctuated equilibrium appears to be largely incorrect. One of the things that Gould, there are aspects of it you can say that are good, but Gould and Eldridge were basically proposing that you would have stasis and then you'd have population bottlenecks where you'd have larger genetic events like chromosomal inversions or macromutations, stuff like that. And so within those smaller populations, they would then that's where speciation would occur. So on the periphery of their populational ranges, and then you'd have the speciation events happening that way. It turns out, however, you don't have to have a population bottleneck for speciation to occur. Yeah, so the observation of stasis is well founded, but the mechanisms, Gould and Eldridge propose are not well accepted. Yeah, that's a pretty good overview of it. Stasis occurs there are periods where you can have rapid evolution, periods where you have slow evolution, that happens. But the idea that you have to have chromosomal inversions and population bottlenecks for speciation to occur, that doesn't really seem to be well accepted anymore. Stuff like species selection. Species selection happens. I'm not arguing against that, but it's not really that big of a deal. There are other things I think you could say largely it was kind of overblown. The mechanisms for it were kind of overblown or incorrect, but the paleontological aspects of it were okay. So
okay.
It's just kind of
So the mechanism, I'm not entirely, because some of that thinking is along the lines of what I was talking about earlier with having a population bottleneck and
I mean,
required, basically.
you can have population bottlenecks. So like you can have population bottlenecks where you have a population go somewhere else, and then because you have a smaller set, the statistics of some rare event occurring is much higher, and that can get fixed.
Right.
So like, yes, that can happen, but it's not required for speciation to occur, was kind of the big thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, Gould wrote some wonderful books. I have a couple of his books. Wonderful Life is Wonderful Life is pretty good. I mean, like, it's good for its time. Ever Since Darwin, I think is pretty good overall. I like it. It's a good book. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, I'm kind of like I was talking to you earlier about philosophy of consciousness. I always call myself a consciousness theory slut. I will sleep with any theory, basically. And when I listen to it, and the thing is with evolution, it's kind of the same thing. Everything I hear, I like to incorporate just a little bit, sprinkle a little bit of it on my entire, the idea of, because there's a little truth in almost all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you got this newfangled stuff with basically emergence and multiple hierarchical top-down control and all of that, and electrical fields with I think is it Mike Levine, basically with his, I mean, all of that stuff. It's all a part of it, and I like to keep an open mind and borrow each little bit of it, and try to get my mind around life. Basically. Hi, Nestling. Nestling's here. You got a Nestling.
Hey, Nestling.
Yeah. Hello. Is my audio good?
I'm going to turn you up a little bit. I'm going to turn you up. Okay, I got you maxed out. So try it again.
Maybe it confuses my earphones as my mic again. I have to change my settings. Be right back.
Yeah, you're better because they got you cranked up. But anyway.
But yeah, I think you're right in that. I think you're right that the issue I tend to see is less that like something is just like not true at all. The issue is more what is the actual relevance of it. Right. I very rarely see like, no, this is a process that just doesn't happen anywhere. I very rarely see that. Yeah. It's almost always like, yeah, okay, it happens in like 5% of species, but we don't typically need to worry about it, for these reasons. I think that's typically how these things are hashed out in the literature. Like, do chromosomal inversions happen? Yes. Do population bottlenecks happen? Yeah. Does species selection happen? Yeah, it happens. And it's just like, yeah, but do all these things necessarily have to contribute to speciation? Well, no. So yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And we got Andrew.
Hello.
Good. Andrew's here. Good.
How's it going, Andrew?
Hey.
Can't hear him.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is. Yeah, we can hear you.
You said you had a question about trilobiddles?
Trilobiddles.
It kind of prompted by your earlier brief discussion about kind of mentioning trilobites, and B it was a recent video Standing for Truth did with Carl Werner, I believe. That
idiot. Yeah, that dude was like, he walks the line with like actual libel.
Yeah.
Actual what?
Libel. He accuses anthropologists of outright fabricating.
Oh, that guy, yes. He picked on a bunch of like a dead anthropologist and was claiming he did all this fraud.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I was thinking lawyer the whole time.
Yeah, I like the stuff he says. Like, I'm surprised he hasn't gotten sued yet. It's like genuinely surprised. Anyway, sorry, Andrew.
Go ahead.
Well, they also did a part 1 to that series, kind of related to this topic about living fossils, and look, they're modern birds and the messes and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, crap.
But briefly, they kind of talked about the Cambrian explosion, which I know you've also done videos on. one, Jackson.
Unfortunately, I even I don't know if you know, but a couple of us co-wrote Professor Dave's videos on Stephen Meyer and both of his Gunter Beckley videos. So I got to participate in that.
You just roboted for 30 seconds again, so you got to repeat all that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I co-authored. Well, for speed, I co-authored a couple of Professor Dave's videos on the one on Stephen Meyer and the two on Gunter Beckley. So yeah, I've unfortunately I'm familiar with the and then we also did that stupid video on long story short years ago with the Cambrian.
Oh,
So yeah.
Okay.
Well, knowing about the Cambrian fossil record nowadays, because I've been to but compared to their representation of it, and in particular the question they were asking about, because you and I both know that trilobites in the Cambrian don't appear in the early Cambrian, I should say, or the earliest Cambrian, I should say. They only appear late early Cambrian. I think it's like around 520 million years ago, and those sorts of strata.
Yeah, something like that.
Like stage 2, right? The base of stage 2 is, I think, is the appearance of the trilobites. Yeah. Although I think there is evidence that, like, I think they found trackways of trilobites.
Well, Russophicus, yeah. I don't know if Russophicus has been like definitively pinned as a trilobite, but yeah, it does. I think it's Russophicus, and I think Diplacnites is the other one. But there's like two, like arthropod trackways, like right near the base. However, you have like the isoxiids and things like that, which do show up right at the start of the Cambrian, but they're like either very derived stem arthropods or they're very basal crown arthropods, like one of the two.
Yeah, and I've also seen some fascinating arguments of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. That's all right.
I've heard about some fascinating arguments that like before a certain point the ocean was low in like certain nutrients they need to make hard calcified skeletons, and so maybe around this time, like at the base of stage 2, perhaps many lineages independently made hard parts, and especially trilobites. They even made their eyes out of calcite, I believe, right? Or something.
Yeah. The lens is calcite. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway,
the lens of the trilobite is so complex. It couldn't have evolved.
Yeah.
Of course. Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway.
My specific question related to that. Sorry, that was kind of a long-winded question here, but
no, you're fine. We interrupted you.
So I guess what I'm just curious about, to your knowledge, Jackson, are there any fossil precursors or possible precursors to trilobites that aren't, I guess, stem group arthropods like the radiodonts, like Anomalocaris and such? Look kind of sort of like trilobite, I guess, more within the Arthropoda clade, but like aren't really trilobites, but more precursors, if that makes sense. Like, do you know of any examples?
Yeah, I personally, I don't know of any examples. You mentioned the Arthropoda, which is like trilobites, but not trilobites. You know, all those guys like Xanderella.
You also have like Marella, or how you pronounce it?
Well, I think Marella is in like, from what I've seen, that guy was like stem mandibulate or something like that. Yeah, I think Marella's a different one, but yeah. So those are the only ones that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of anything like there are a bunch of clades, because we talked about it in the video we just did recently, the brine shrimp's tail. We talk about the evolution of arthropods. So yeah, we went through the radiodonts, things like that, and then Opabinia, and then there's Fuchsianhuida, Isoxiida, the megachirons. There's like all these groups that are either very derived stem arthropods, or they're very basal crown arthropods, or they're like, some of them might be paraphyletic, and so it's like, it's really hard to tell, because they're obviously evolving at this time in the early Cambrian, and they're so closely related to each other. It's hard to figure out like who exactly is like next, who's slightly more derived.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything.
I think there's also a debate about exactly where the trilobites and the larger arthropod belongs. Like, I believe most say they are like related to the chelicerates, like the spiders, the horseshoe crab, and such. But I've also seen some arguments that they are more closer to the mandibulates as well. So I think most will say it's probably closer to the chelicerates. Yeah. And if you see also like early horseshoe crabs and early relatives of the arachnids and such, they also look quite trilobite-ish.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually kind of surprised they don't consider how superficially they seem to view all these animals. They don't see trilobites as, oh, look, they're just horseshoe crabs.
That would be very funny, but I think trilobites are too well known of a group for them to do that.
That's true.
I mean, I say that, but at the same time, they did literally put fishing lures on the same pages.
I believe on your the video that you did on the Harunyaya tech that you posted the thumbnail includes a comparison between a trilobite and a modern isopod.
Oh gosh, what group was that?
The Antarctic isopod. Or I don't remember the species name specifically.
Shoot, they're even called like trilobite isopods or something like that. That
makes it even worse.
Trilobite isopod.
Trilobitis. I think trilobitis or something probably.
Is it Cisuralian? What group is that? Oh my gosh. Here they are. Yeah. What is the family called? Dang. But yeah, they're literally called the trilobite isopods because they look pretty similar. Now, of course, they don't have the same mouth parts, right? Because trilobites are not mandibulates, but all crustaceans are mandibulates. And so for it to be the case that these things are just trilobites, it's like, well, they don't have the right mouth parts. They literally can't be just trilobites. They don't have the same eyes. They lack the eye structure that is unique to trilobites.
The genus name is Ceratosaurus or Ceratosaurus.
Yeah,
if I pronounce it correctly. Yeah, Ceratosaurus trilobitoides. Yeah.
Oh, Nestle, do you remember the other one that was it Raw Matt posted the thing that was like Psittacosaurus is just a parrot?
Yeah. The first time I noticed these memes was by a video that was made by Raw Matt on Standing for Truth, now Donnie channel. So it's incredibly even though Raw Matt did not make these memes himself, he just saw them on Facebook and then he just used them without any thinking of his own, of course. But yeah,
right.
Like the guy makes so many basic mistakes. How the people over there
there's an entire Facebook group. It's called "Where Is the Evolution?" that just generates these memes and. We actually got in touch with a guy who debunks those and used to have a YouTube channel. He was called Exabyte Spider. And I got in touch with him when we were doing all the background on this group. And he was like, thanks for shouting me out and everything. And thanks for doing all this. It was super cool. But yeah, just the algae that are incorporating bacteria. Oh, the like nitrogen fixing one. Yeah. That was pretty cool.
We have a quick question here from Sydney Raptor. In layman's speak, are there any precursor complicated life forms that began before the Cambrian diversification? Yeah.
So basically, if you start with life as a whole, like you look at the history of life on Earth, the very first organisms we find, or the very first remains of organisms we find in the fossil record, date back to like 3.7 billion years ago, and these are like forms of carbon that aren't just produced geologically. These would have required like biogenic sources. So, and then you have actual fossils of bacteria like cyanobacteria, which look pretty similar to modern ones. And then around around like 2 billion years ago, something like that, you get your very first eukaryotes, which are called acritarchs. So they're basically eukaryotes that don't have an assigned taxon. And if you figure out what it is, then it goes in that taxon. But until then, it's an acritarch.
Eukaryote is a bit difficult because by morphology alone, you cannot really know where the eukaryote belongs in which lineage. Yeah.
So you have these eukaryotes. So you have your first life 3.7 billion years ago. Then by about 2 billion years ago, you have your first eukaryotes, which is right after the great oxygenation event. So you have an increase in oxygen, and so then finally the endosymbiotic event can do aerobic respiration, which produces way more ATP than either glycolysis alone does or like fermentation does. And so you have your eukaryotes, which can then have much larger genomes and much larger sizes. They can actually become multicellular. Well, I should be careful with that because technically some bacteria are kind of multicellular, but they can do multicellularity in a way that bacteria just can't do. And then you get your first macroscopic forms you get your first animals really about 650 million years ago. You have evidence of sponge steranes in rocks in Oman. And then around the start of the Ediacaran, you have you have
phosphatized.
The embryos.
Some embryo candidates. Some of them are probably not embryos, but I think Cavia sphera is a pretty good embryo candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get more complex. So you have your stem eumetazoans, so things that are at least Cnidarian grade, Charnia, which is those frond-like guys, look just a big frond, but they're animals. So those are stem eumetazoans, and then you also get your first stem bilaterians, things like Dickinsonia, Icaria, and then you have actually true bilaterians or crown bilaterians in the Ediacaran, things like Kimberella, things like Eulingia, like Claudina. So you do have actual crown bilaterians by the end of the Ediacaran, so prior to the Cambrian. So in layman's terms, yes, you have 20 plus million years before the Cambrian explosion proper starts, you have bilaterian animals that show up for the first time in the record.
You have stem groups. You have stem groups of bilaterians. You have also stem groups of specific within bilateria, but stem lophot, very complicated names to pronounce.
Namacalathus. Things like that. Yeah. So the answer is yes. So there are animals. There are animals before the Cambrian, and if you watch that Professor Dave video that we did, or that we wrote for him, we go over how Stephen Meyer tries to argue, and also Gunter Beckley does the same thing, that they try to argue there are no animals in the Ediacaran. Well, first they argue there are no animals, and then when you point out that there are, they say, okay, yeah, but it doesn't matter, but also there are no animals. So it's they keep going, they switch rapidly back and forth.
They really don't want to admit the point.
Exactly. It's kind of like the Olsen twin. You think there's two, but there's only one, and she moves very fast back and forth. But anyway, so Gunter Beckley really hates saying that there are animals in the Precambrian. Even when he admits it, he just says, "Who cares? It doesn't matter." Like Hautia and Aurora Lumina, which are almost certainly Cnidarians and crown group Cnidarians in the Ediacaran. He's just like, I don't care. I don't care about those. Doesn't matter. It's just moving goalposts. Exactly.
The sponges and the Cnidarians, one of the early diverging animals. But again, there's a debate about the exact topology of the base at the animal phylogeny. Some groups say, oh, you have the sponges and everything else within the animals, or you have also the enigmatic group of comb jellies. The how do you call them again?
Ctenophores. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So but I think for now it's safe to say sponges, but again, there is like a whole debate on
Kind of been
this.
going back
That's
and
what
forth
it's
over
like.
recent years.
They tend,
Yeah.
they tend to lean towards sponges, but it's definitely not resolved yet, basically.
Yeah.
And we even thought that like the bilaterian topology was safe until like 2021. Then Capley et al. Was like, how about no? Actually,
It might even be
chimeras
it might even be a situation with like, for example, within birds you have a group called Neo-Aves.
Mhm.
And within Neo-Aves you have like several, like about 7, I believe, 7 orders of Neo-Avians that like they diverged from each other right around the extinction event 66 million years ago, for like the big dinosaur extinction event. And the exact topology of how these 7 are related to each other are like it's a big mess, because they are it's probably the case of a what's called incomplete lineage sorting, where different lineages diverge so fast from each other you cannot really differentiate the phylogeny in that way. Maybe it's the same case with sponges and ctenophores as well. Who knows?
It's been so long. Even if they diverged, distantly in time from each other, it's been like so long that the number of mutations that have cropped up have like obscured the original signal.
Yeah,
It's just-
maybe one
a mess.
might have diverged 50 million years earlier than the other, but then we are talking about something that happened like maybe around like between 800 and 1000 million years ago, probably. I would estimate. Yeah,
very, very long time in the past. So yeah, it's like it's not surprising. It's not surprising that the groups that are hardest to place are either 1, diverged a long time ago, or 2, diverged very rapidly from each other. And it's like we expect those because there's actual like statistical issues with trying to differentiate, trying to figure out which topology is correct and all that. And like these are all very well known things. These are well known issues in phylogenetics and creations.
I want to say that
this
the
is
relationships are impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so no, you go ahead. Sorry, I
As the same, the relationships probably aren't impossible to figure out. I just think they're as we all know, extremely difficult to figure out for those reasons. Yeah. But hopefully, maybe one day we'll decipher them a little more precisely with more data. Hopefully.
Really interesting that I saw a video. I think it was on Trilobites, and they've been doing CT scans, and they're getting better and better at scanning these fossils. Yeah. We're able to go over all of these fossils that we haven't fucked up by grinding them up right to look at them. And they're getting a whole lot more information. I think on the Trilobites they had some soft tissue.
The newest one, yes, a new paper just came out. Yeah.
Like most trilobite fossils are like shells, like the hard mineralized exoskeleton, basically. So but very rarely do we get the inside. But this time we did get some, and we see like mouth parts of this one. It's very interesting. Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that we're able to go back now over all of these fossils and get a tremendous amount of information, basically with new technology. And that is pretty exciting. And it's also a little intimidating because there's going to be so much information that it's going to take us a while to assimilate all of it.
Yeah, that's what happened basically to hallucigenia. And actually it looks like Pikaia too. It looks like Pikaia followed the same path as hallucigenia, was reconstructed upside down. And so when you go back over these fossils, as you said, with better technology, they're sitting in drawers for like 40, 50 years, whatever, and some grad student or doctoral students doing their thesis, pull them out and they go, hold on a second, they got this wrong. This is actually the correct orientation of this animal. And then you go back and do that, and now suddenly it's like, holy crap, this tells us way more about this organism now than it did 50 years ago when we looked at it for the first time. In the case of hallucigenia, it was like, what the heck is this thing? It's got tentacles coming out of its back. It's got these weird spiny legs. Well, wait a second. It's flipped. The tentacles are the legs and the spines are coming out of the back, and it's actually an onychophoran, So it's like wait a second.
if I remember correctly, they identified hallucigenia as a stem onychoform because of its claws. Like the morphology of its claws are very similar to I believe the what has become the mouthed parts of the onychoforms. Like the claws have moved basically inwards into the mouth. I think I remember that correctly. Maybe I'm mistaken about that.
I think having claws on the limbs is like a basal character of Panarthropoda, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so it's like it's super cool that happens, and it just happened with Pikaia. It looked like reconstructions of her upside down, and so because those reconstructions now we have the correct orientation, or so we think. Now there are homologies that can be drawn between it and other chordates, and its position is actually shifted. I think you mentioned that earlier. It was like it's now like a stem chordate. It's not a crown chordate anymore.
It's just outside the crown group. Like the last common ancestor between the lancelet and us. That last common ancestor, and then Pikaia is just outside of, like, according to the really recent study, at least. Yeah.
And that paper, I'm actually not at all surprised that Vetulicolians are paraphyletic. I'm not at all surprised by that, because there was a paper I read for the video we did on the ragworm's tail. I pulled a lot of stuff for that from on the evolution of echinoderms from this one paper, and hemichordates. And in that paper, they mention that, like, I think it's Didazoan has a number of characteristics that set it apart from other Vetulicolians, and they were like, that probably means that this is a grade of animal rather than a clade. And you know what? Surely enough, there it is. Yeah.
Do they still seem to be stem deuterostome grade kind of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So that position hasn't changed very much.
Basically, are you familiar with like the Miyakits? What's your name again? Like I see R-A-R-E. Andrew. Like, are you familiar with the Miyakits, Andrew?
Like the carnivore morphs.
Yes, like basically the Miyakits were an old term for like the ancestors to the carnivorans, the cats, the dogs, and so it's basically the similar situation where like we thought these very ancient animals were very similar to each other, but it turns out that some of them are actually closer to us in terms of most recent common ancestor. Statistics is catching up slowly.
It's like some of the, they're not all just like cat ancestors. Some of them are dog ancestors too. Yeah, that sort of stuff. That happens, right? Like, I mean, we should expect that, right? If evolution is true, shouldn't we expect that to be the case? There are going to be groups that are.
There's a very favorite point of mine to repeat. Like, if you have two lineages, when you trace them backwards and see the relatives in the fossil record, often you get to a certain point when the two of them become almost indistinguishable.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, early scientists have perhaps found these, and they say like, oh, they belong to one group. No, it turns out they actually belong to two different lineages that today look very different from each other.
We did a video on that, splitting kinds.
Yes,
which was also like
at least
4
in
years
cases
ago.
where we have a good fossil record preservation.
Yeah, if you look at like I think one of the examples was like the Sirenians and the elephants.
Yes, that's
the
my
earliest
favorite example. Yeah,
look really, really similar to the earliest elephants, like Meratherium, like Pesosiren and Meratherium. If you like put them side by side, you'd be like, wow, these look really similar in terms of like their ambulatory capabilities, the like their environments. Like they're pretty similar. And also for Sydney, no, I have not seen those. I don't really watch YouTube shorts, really. Sorry.
Yeah, they should be taken out and shot for doing that if they're cracking up fossils.
The elephant, the Sirenian is my favorite example, because when you bring this up to most people today, like, oh, did you know that elephants are most closely related to the manatees and the dugongs? Like, most people will be at first like, well, what the hell are you saying? Like, but then you see the fossils of an early manatee and an early elephant, and they look a bit like cousins almost.
Yeah, the difference. It turned out like the major difference between them was like elephants specialized on eating freshwater plants, while the Cisuralians specialize on eating saltwater, like algae and stuff. And so, like, because you have this very, very minor like change in algae, that's difference in diet. Sorry, that's going to impact where they're going to live, which is going to impact the selection pressures they're going to undergo. And so you have this like what starts out as very small, suddenly like results in these enormous changes that we have today. I mean, elephants
divergent nodes start off with a speciation event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just one little speciation event. You know, two populations went different directions, and one went north, one went south, and now they are completely different from each other. So yeah, like that's all evolution takes, right?
Before I forget to mention, like one sticking point I have against like people, for example, like long story short, who brought up the one argument he brought up that I remember is about like cytochrome B sequences, and if you do a phylogeny on using those sequences, you get a different phylogeny compared to the standard phylogeny. But of course, he doesn't mention how phylogenetics is a heavily statistical discipline.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's what often forget about. Like when they say like, oh, what about convergence? What about horizontal gene transfer? Like these things are taken into account when they do these studies, and it's just a methodology that you use to draw a statistically supported conclusion. And it turns out that when we look at the tree that long story short it brought up, the tree was not very strongly supported, and the authors of the study noted that this topology that deviates from the standard topology is not statistically supported over the standard one. So yeah,
we did a
really seem to
video.
Understand error bars or statistical variance that much.
Oh no! Long story short, definitely doesn't, because he pulled crap like that with regard to the Basilosaurus and the La Meseta formation in Antarctica. So he was using only the oldest fossil. So he only used the most ancient ends of the error bars for everything. And we were like, hold on, you can't do that. Like, that's not how that works. He wasn't using the average. He was only using the highest end, which it's not. Just like that's how statistics works.
But I do believe I would guess that he doesn't do most of his own research. Like he just gets just gets proposed material by others. Like for example, his older videos that we've responded to early on were like mostly just Jonathan Wells' old points, basically. Yeah.
He's being supported by Discovery Institute now, anyway.
And now he is the Discovery Institute animator, basically, yeah.
Well, what's funny is like he got scooped by the Discovery Institute, and the other guy we talked to, a bit of orange, got scooped by Eric Hovind. And you know what? I have not seen him since. We
have to stop doing this, Jackson. We have to stop.
Well, it's funny because like I'm not a big channel. I'm a small channel, and so like we're kicking them into fame. I guess the you know what that must mean is the creationists just take anyone with a pulse, right? That's the only thing I can take away from that. At the same time, though, I did get called deplorable ilk by Gunther Beckley, and that was very funny.
Yes.
Now you mention you call yourself a small YouTuber, but it turns out that the main people who like give the Discovery Institute any attention is basically you and the Dr. Dan and such. Like then no scientists, practically nobody gives them any attention except for you.
You want to know something funny? Casey Luskin declined having a debate with me. He was given like, hey, you can talk to I was told like, oh hey, I've got a line with Casey Luskin. would you be interested in talking with him? And I was like, heck yes, put me in the ring. Well, he declined, and he declined, Nestlig, because he watched our live streams where we critiqued the Discovery U stuff. That was all him. That was all his stuff. So he watched our videos, like just absolutely trashing Discovery U, and he said no. He said that I'm too mean. So,
all right.
Good.
Okay. Whatever.
Like, did he say when he watched it? Like, or did he watch after you invited him, or did he watch?
No, I didn't
before
invite him.
you...
This was a third party who was telling me this.
Third party.
A third party approached me and was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then they came back and said, "Well, it turns out he doesn't like you, actually." And so,
but you don't know if he watched your video before or after the third party contacted. All right, yeah.
I don't know if they said, "Hey, would you be interested in talking to him?" And he was like, "I've never heard of this guy. Let me go look at it."
Let me look. Yeah.
That
maybe
that,
but it probably happened that way. I would suspect. Yeah.
It probably did. I mean, yeah, you're probably right. Which, however, I don't know how Gunter Beckley found out about me, because my name's not like. The only time I could think of that he may have run into me was when, because Professor Dave put me as like, "Hey, thanks to Jackson for helping me with the script in the description." So that may have been how he found me. Otherwise,
I also remember, like a very long time ago, I think Evograd responded to Beckley as well. Very long time ago. Like, I remember, I forgot the exact quote, but Beckley responded to Evograd, or what is his other name again?
Rational Mind.
Rational Mind, yeah, Rational Mind, or Evograd. Mm-hmm. And I think Beckley called him a know-it-all, or something.
Oh, that's right.
It was like a know-it-all.
Yeah, he called him like an atheist know-it-all or something like that. Yeah, I do know
atheist grad student know-it-all, or something like that. I forgot the. Maybe I can look it up. I can look up the exact quote.
I actually put deplorable ilk in my in my Twitter bio after I saw that, because so like after that, because I didn't know about it, and then Erica Gutsa-Gibbon, she puts out a message to us where she's like, "Hey guys, a bunch of us got called out by Gunter Beckley," and it was Arn Ra, Professor Dave, Erica, Dapper, and myself, and so we all did a stream where we were like, "Hi, we're the deplorable ilk," you know, and we talked about how stupid Gunter's article was and the stuff he does. So it's really a shame, because I actually, during my thesis, my master's thesis, I came across some of his work in the wild, because my paper was on beetle iridescence in dung beetles, one particular group of dung beetles, and Gunter Beckley is a paleoentomologist by trade. So he's done stuff on the evolution of beetles. And so I actually came across his work, and it's perfectly fine. It's decent papers. But then I read that, and then I go read this article he wrote on, he writes on, like, the blog post
all over again.
Yeah, and it's like, what the heck? What's going on here?
So Sydney Raptor asks, what is the best creationist organization? I'd say BioLogos, right? I mean, they're creationists.
Though.
They're old Earth. So
are they? I mean, I guess they're just kind of like theistic evolutionists. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't think
they had a thing on horseshoe crabs, by the way, where they were like, no, they were pushing back on this.
Yeah, thankfully they pushed back against
my. To borrow a quote, the only good creationist organization is a dead one. I think CMI, ICR, AIG, I think they're all garbage. They all want Christian nationalism. They're all terrible. So, whatever.
Hey, but, sorry, just a random thing here. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say that they're all political now. They're all this right wing, all the way.
Well, I mean, they always were,
American
weren't they? They just couldn't be open about it. They always wanted
True,
theocracy. They just couldn't say
Yeah,
that because
they did,
remember what happened with the Wedge document and the DI back in 2000. Like when
right.
that came out, everyone was like with pearl clutching. But now it's like, yeah, what else is new?
It's
They all
okay
want
now,
theocracy.
right? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they're all evil, so whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, and yes, annoying trilobite exuviae reef newsletters. That's true. It was a very crappy dissertation topic. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. We had some really beautiful beetles we worked on. So
Yeah.
but yeah, actually the BioLogos is phenomenal. I actually used one of their articles in the debate I had with Standing for Truth back in 2019. I think like 5 years ago. Good God. And I used one of their articles. Nestle, do you remember what it was? It was about like the spectrum of mutations.
Oh, that's a good one.
was
Can you
like-
repeat that?
The article from BioLogos we used for the
From
SFT
Steve
debate,
Schaffner?
it was like the mutation spectrum is like if we
I think so,
expected
yeah.
that humans evolved from other primates, we should expect the same like types of mutations that occurred in our lineage.
I think that's
And
pretty
lo and behold,
good.
Mhm.
Yeah, they do a lot of good work.
Yeah, they sure do. Yeah. They actually, I think AIG hates them even more than atheists. They're like
They probably
these cursed
do.
Christians.
Oh,
Yeah.
who's that? It's not Francis Crick, but it's Francis
Collins.
Collins. They hate him so much. I mean, they're so mad at him.
And he's just a dude doing, like human genome stuff. Like he's just a dude.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
They hate that there are Christians out there who are not young Earth creationists. They hate. They honestly hate
Yeah.
non-creationist Christians more than they hate atheists because they can just write us off, right? They can just say, "Oh, he's just a dirty atheist. We don't care what he says." But you can't just write off Francis Collins or Kenneth Miller or Robert Bach or Mary Schweitzer. You have to engage with them. So,
Which is why when you point out that there are Christian evolutionary biologists out there, they have to know true Scotsman fallacy.
right? They're not real
What
Christians.
did Ryan called them cowards, that they're cowards,
Or
because they
they're
won't tell the truth.
compromisers.
Oh, they're dirty compromisers. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
So one random thing before it slips my mind, you mentioned Jackson from Copley et al., I think it was. Was
Copley
that
et al. 2021? Yeah. Sorry, I'll pull it up right
what
now.
exactly relationships did that infer differently or kind of compared to
So
earlier?
basically, what had
here.
happened was here's one of the papers. This is not it. Basically, this is one of the papers by them. You can look at
Sorry, now
their
try
other papers.
brings back to
How do
an earlier topic.
Are you in the? How do I? Here, I'll put it here in our private chat, and then I guess Speed can put it in the
Private chat, I'll pull it up.
Basically, what they argued is that there is long branch attraction there and other types of statistical errors that are causing echinodermata or the echinoderm acorn worm group to be sister to chordates instead of echinoderms and acorn worms being sister to all other bilaterians. So basically, they're arguing that yes, there are these statistical errors that are causing echinoderms to be closer to chordates than chordates to protostomes. Now, since those papers came out, I've seen a bit of back and forth. It's a mess, basically. I haven't. There's no resolution. I've seen papers that still go the old like deuterostome versus protostome, or protostome plus chordate plus echinoderms. Like it's just kind of all over the place right now. Part of the problem is
find deuterostome modified way more convincing, to be honest.
So I agree with you based on the morphology, and it's what's probably happening is like very, very short branches between all these groups. So probably very short branches. You had I forget what his name was. When Xenocoelomorpha was like split as a group back in like 2016 out of the flatworms, they were put as sister to all other bilaterians because again, they have very, very simplified bodies for proteins.
They're also the ctenophores as well. Being
the
discussed.
ctenophores are also, but they're already difficult.
Was this the Cycloneuralia hypothesis?
No, that's a bit different. That's within protostomes.
Right.
Correctly, I think Cycloneuralia. That's like one of the like preapulids in those guys. Anyway, so the xenocoelomates, the little flatworm guys, basically, the thinking was with this 2016 paper that these guys are sister to all other bilaterians, and then you have the protostome deuterostome split. Well, this paper comes along and says, actually, maybe xenocoelomates are sister to the Echinoderm acornworm group, and that group is sister to all the other bilaterians, which would mean chordates and protostomes are sister, and the deuterostome condition is ancestral for bilaterians. So what's weird about the xenocoelomates is they do both. Actually, they're not deuterostome, all deuterostomes or all protostomes. They kind of do a bit of both. And so that's weird, which would kind of make more sense if they're like basal bilaterians or basally derived bilaterians instead of deuterostomes. But it's like, so I still tend towards the xenocoelomates are first, then deuterostome, protostome, but it's still being debated. So we talked about all that in the ragworm's tale recently.
Right. Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Also, I found the quote, and this is beautiful because, like, remember about Beckley calling Evograd a know-it-all, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I found the article on like Evolution News that Beckley wrote, and it has been edited, and it has removed all of the vitriolic insults against Evograd.
Womp womp.
Like I can read the paragraph. Like the new paragraph reads as this: at the Peaceful Science Forum, an anonymous atheist and self-professed blogging graduate student, Evograd, criticized my article with a red herring quibble about 2 of 6 references that Bobrowski et al. Quoted, while ignoring all the real arguments. Just read my article and compare it with his criticisms to decide for yourself if it has any merit. Anyway, this critic then triumphantly proclaimed, etc. But in the original quote says, let's see, at the Peaceful Science Forum, an anonymous atheist and self-professed blogging graduate student who obviously lacks sufficient expertise as well. Oh, that was removed. That was removed. As some who obviously lacks sufficient expertise as well as some reading comprehension, criticized my article with a red herring quibble about 2 of 6 references, etc. That sentence, who obviously lacks sufficient expertise and reading comprehension, that was removed. Yeah,
he was mauling so hard.
Yeah,
mauling.
And then at the end, another thing that was removed was the sentence, anyway, this young know-it-all then triumphantly proclaimed. The know-it-all was also removed from the original.
You know what's funny about that, Nestle? Like, with Gunter, when he called all of us deplorable ilk, which I'm sure you know includes you two because you come on my channel and we both do our Thursday shows, so that includes you, Nestle. When you called me that, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, he's an idiot creationist. What do I care? But the thing is, like, when he said this about Erica was actually upset about it because they had a very cordial conversations prior to that. And so she's like, what the heck, man? I thought we were, at least friendly. And here he is like,
gets you. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he is like calling her names and stuff, and she's like, why are you doing this? What is the point? And so like,
who is calling her names again? Sorry, I missed it.
Gunter Beckley.
Gunter. Oh, sorry.
He was like, the article where he called us deplorable ilk. He was like saying horrible things about her and Aaron, and I'm sure Aaron also just took it, in stride. But Erica was like, what the heck, man? Personally, like I don't care. They can come up with whatever names they want for me. I don't care what they think. So,
Also, something like that happened with Sal. I think something happened to Sal too, right? Sal
I've got a creationist that's been calling me old balls and satanic homosexual atheist or something, and so when I do a stream, I'll always use that, right? Like old balls. I mean, that's kind of a compliment, right? I mean, I've seen a hell of a lot more action than young balls.
I believe Sal had also like cordial conversation with like Dapper once, and also with other people. But now he's like very, very vitriolic against Dapper even as well.
I had a perfectly fine conversation with him years ago too. Like I don't have any problem with
the only person he's not vitriolic against is Dr. Dan.
Yeah. Well, Sal Cordova turned on me so rapidly, and it was over some really trivial thing. And then he just went on this hate campaign. It was like it really kind of slapped me in the face because we were kind of friends. We were talking personal stuff in the background and all that. And then all of a sudden I'm Satan himself, and it's like, what the fuck just happened? And I think it was right after I really came after him about his fitness bullshit, right? And a couple other things that I showed him up on. But anyway, he won't talk to me. He's blocked me on every possible channel that he can block me on. But, like
end of the day, like I'll be honest with you, I enjoy doing YouTube. This is fun, and I love doing research for the videos that Nestle and I do and all that stuff. But like, end of the day, this is my hobby. This is not my life. I have a 9-to-5 and also a second job, as I was talking about earlier. So like this is just my hobby. I don't get I get mad when people are like dishonest, but at the end of the day, whatever. If they're not dishonest, nice to me. If they are nice to me, whatever, then like I don't care.
Is the creation still going to come tomorrow? Do you
I don't think so. He has
Ryan. You mean tomorrow on this channel?
Oh, I'm sorry, Nestle. I thought you were talking to me.
No. I meant to. I was talking to Jackson. Like I remember Jackson mentioning to the creationist.
I'm saying tentatively no because So I think Dapper scared him off, actually. He's called Lord of the Zings, this guy on Twitter. And I was chatting with him, and I was like, hey, I'd love to have you on. Come on, talk with Dapper and me. And then Dapper kept talking to him. And then I said, all right, so what topics do you want to have? And he vanished. I haven't heard from him in like 3 days. So
yeah, that happens.
I don't think he's coming on. So I think we're just going to have a normal show unless he responds to me before tomorrow. So
well, I think the crab guy is coming on tomorrow, and just one more time.
1, 2, 3, 4. You're in a religion and you don't even know it. You believe things because people tell you to. Ooh.
That's so stupid. It just makes me laugh.
Who is that?
That's Ryan. He was on the channel here last week, and we've been going on about horseshoe crabs, and then tomorrow we're going to have a talk about how an atheist can be moral. I mean, because apparently,
that's gonna be fun.
yeah. Well, I'm hoping he comes on. He is a really nice guy. He's very interesting, and I don't know. Last time I interviewed him, I got a great deal out of it because I kind of understood a little bit more about how creationists think, and that for me is a win. But some days I'll be going after like made by Jim Bob or one of these guys, and I'm all hyped up to do a stream, and then I'll microdose some psilocybin and I'll say, you know what? I don't fucking care.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, why do I care about any of this? But what I love about it is what you said, Jackson, is that every time they come up with something really bad, it launches me on research, and I learn a tremendous amount while I'm doing the research. And they stimulate me. And I don't think, I mean, thank God there are creationists out there, because I don't think I even would have gotten into a lot of this stuff had it not been for them. You know, if they had to piss off.
You're right. It's not just creationists. It's like it's every loony conspiracy. Every time you I run into somebody who's either an anti-vaxxer or not so much flat earthers. They really aren't that interesting. Or
Made by Jim Bob doesn't believe in NASA. He believes that NASA is a front to siphon money to the military. He doesn't believe we went.
I mean, that's
I don't think the military needs NASA to siphon.
Actually, we did a video on that. We did a video specifically on like how much of the American budget actually goes towards like scientific institutions. It's like less than 1%. It's a very small percent.
What the hell would they want the NASA money for? It's just negligible.
Yeah. But yeah, like you're right.
The scientists go into the field to make those big bucks.
Have you guys ever seen the channel? And that's the guy, I know you have because we had him on. But Andrew and Speed, have you guys ever heard of Tony Reed's channel, How Creationism Taught Me Real Science?
So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
So I love him. He's super cool. And I actually met RJ I met Apologia through his channel because he does a thing at the end of each season, and sadly he stopped doing videos several years ago. But he did a thing at the end of every season where he'd be like, here are some cool budding channels to check out. And he mentioned Apologia in one. He shouted me out in a later one. And then I watched Apologia's channel, and Apologia featured RJ. So that's how I met RJ. And then, of course, RJ and I did The Rocks Were There. So that's how all that. But all of his videos are, all of Tony Reed's videos are, he starts with the creationist claim, and then that stimulates him to go do all this research. And then by the time he's finished, he's like, I know way more about this topic than the person who made this claim does. You know? And that's how it always happens, isn't it? Like whether it's evolution or whether it's anti-vax or flat earth or whatever the frick. I've been researching today, like I'm going to be talking on a channel in a few weeks about like public education. So I'm reading all this background information about that. And it's like, it's really interesting. You learn so much cool stuff and you're like, wow, I didn't think of that before. Why, and then you put it in your notes and then you have all these notes. And then when you come up to a person who's got this whole like narrative in their head, you can be like, actually, here's all the data on this, you can just like pull the floor out from under them. So,
by the way, The Rocks Were There. Wasn't there? Did you get volume 2 yet?
We're working on that.
You're working on it. You've been working on it for a long time.
Listen. As I have stated, I have 2 jobs.
I've been holding my breath the whole time.
We are working on it.
The rocks tell a lot. The rocks tell a lot.
I promise we are working on it. We have like 3 chapters of it done out of 7, so we're like about almost halfway there. We're working on it.
I've never seen a book where an entire grove of trees died for the reference section, right?
Yeah,
it's horrible.
We had to make the text smaller so that we could fit the book within Amazon's page limit. Right. And that's like
unbelievable reference. Yeah.
I would love for a creationist to dig into our book and be like, can we talk specifically about this one thing? And it doesn't happen, either because they just don't know our book exists or they're so intimidated by the size of it.
It's intimidating. Yeah.
It's
an encyclopedia.
It is like, it's not meant to be read. Like I know, I don't know if you guys ever remember that there was a there was a Twitter account called Take That Darwin. He was hilarious. And he got our book and he read it and he was telling us how much he enjoyed it. And we were like, oh my God, you just read right through it. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. It's Apologia said he uses it, like as you said, like an encyclopedia. Like if a creationist mentions genetic entropy or the Y chromosome or whatever, he'll flip to the back, see, oh, okay, and then go see like, oh, what do they say about this? So that's how we kind of intended for it to be read. So because
it's a reference. It's a reference. It's a wonderful reference. Pretty cool.
Oh, we appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
Can I get out of here now, guys? I gotta go watch.
Yeah,
I gotta go watch some Amazon Prime.
We have to release speed.
Otherwise,
he gets cranky. I appreciate it. You're a very good talk. Yes.
Thank you and speed.
Yep. And what do you have coming up, Jackson?
I'm working
Volume
on
2.
Yeah, in addition to Volume 2, I'm also working on the leafcutter ant's tail, which I'll send that off to Nestle whenever I finish the script. But
it'll probably be a 1 hour video at this point.
God, the last 4 or 5 videos have all been 45 minutes long. They're absolutely insanely long.
Is the book also like this? Like are each chapter progressively long?
Nope. The introduction to the protostomes is kind of long, but then each tail, the brine shrimp's tail is pretty short. The leafcutter ant's tail is pretty short. It's only a couple pages. But the problem is we're trying to cover the evolution of everything in this series, so it makes it long. So doing that, and then of course our normal Thursday streams. That's pretty much it. We're just continuing with the ancestor's tale. Eventually, we plan on finishing it so that we can start doing a climate change denial book, because then we're going to go through that chapter by chapter and analyze it and have responses to all of the climate change denial stuff. So,
okay. Sydney has something amusing here. The refutation to a quote mine claim can be found in the same paper.
True.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're going to get out. Okay. So goodbye, cruel world. Thank you guys in chat for attending, and thank the 3 of you for giving my tiny little channel some fucking attention.